evening, good evening, good evening. We are running slightly behind time. That just means I'll go overtime. Tonight we're beginning a new series. Let me welcome all of you who are in the building and all those who are joining us online. Beginning a new series tonight from Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through verse 28, a series entitled Developing a $1 Million Mindset. Developing a $1 Million Mindset. Some time ago, I asked our church on a Wednesday night, matter of fact, if anybody thought Pastor Thorpe was rich. And Deaconess Brenda said she believed that Pastor Thorpe was rich. You right, Sister Brenda. I am believing God in this current season for all the great things that he is going to do, which of course applies not only to money, but walking in the blessings that the Lord has in store for us. However, Sister Norma, I do want to focus specifically on money tonight in this series. Because some folks like to say, well, you know, money really doesn't matter. Money can't buy your happiness. Well, let me have all yours. Let me have If you're going to be a whole lot happier without yours, we can just lift a special offering tonight and contribute to your happiness by allowing you to unload whatever it is that you have. Matthew chapter 25, reading from the Message Bible, verse 14 down through verse 28. Again, let me welcome all those who are joining us online, on Facebook and YouTube. We are honored. Pray that everyone had a very Merry Christmas, and we're looking forward to great things in the days, weeks, months, and even years to come. By the time we arrive at verse 14 of Matthew 25, Jesus is teaching his disciples about things that were to come. And he actually uses verse 14 through verse 28 as an example of how the kingdom of God operates. What I want to do, Brother Alvin, tonight is I don't want to look at this passage in its traditional context or the prophetic sense, but Tam, I want to take the example that Jesus used and break down the pieces of Jesus's example because they deal specifically with money. And I believe that anytime Jesus tells a story, you can trust the stories that he tells. So here's verse 14, again reading verse 14 through verse 28 in the Message Bible. Here's verse 14. It's also like a man going off on an extended trip. Before he leaves for the trip, he called his servants together and delegated responsibilities. So right from the surface, we see that there's a man. We're going to learn in a moment. He's a wealthy man. We know that he has servants, and we know that he will use his servants to add to his own wealth and benefit the servants at the same time. So verse 14 says, he goes off on an extended trip. Don't miss that, Sister Norman. That means he's going to be gone for a while. But before he leaves, he calls together all of his servants and he delegates to them responsibilities. Now, the man certainly had a whole lot of servants. Only 3 of the servants are mentioned here because these 3 servants were most likely in leadership positions within the man's organization. Here's verse 15. To one he gave $5,000. To another, 2,000. To a third, 1,000. Why? Why did he give them different amounts? The end of verse 15 says, he gave it to them depending on their ability, then he left. Now, the inference of these verses, Deacon James, he didn't give them this money for them to keep. He gave them the money for them to invest. The first one, he gives him 5,000. The second one, he gives 2,000. The third one, he gave 1,000, depending on the track record that they had already established. Always remember this, Sister Adriana. The Lord is never concerned about the size of what we give him. He is only concerned about the level of our sacrifice. If we were bringing in, let's say that someone had gone grocery shopping for a church event, and we were bringing things from the parking lot into the church in preparation for the church event. If there was a 4-year-old in the building, and they went out and they grabbed a bag, one of them big bags, now, not them little bags, not for a church event, one of those big bags of Ruffles or Lay's potato chips, and they say, I'm going to carry this. And a 6-year-old comes with a 1-gallon jug of sweet tea, because that's how I like mine. Sweet, I don't know how you like yours, but I want mine with a little sugar in it. 4-year-old has the big bag of chips. 6-year-old has the gallon jug of tea. What I would hate to see is a big, grown, able-bodied man coming in carrying some styrofoam cups. That means the grown man is not carrying any more than the little child is. Now, so then the grown man comes in, 4, 5 cases of sodas or 3, 4 cases of water. The grown man carrying 6 cases of water should not look down at the 4-year-old carrying the bag of chips. Because the truth is, both of them are doing the best they can with what they can handle. And one of the things we'll see tonight, all of us can't handle the same thing. Oh, catch this. Some of us can handle the same stuff, we just can't all handle it at the same time. What God can give you to manage right now, he better not give that to me. I'd make a mess out of it. Oh, how many of you have learned that there is some stuff you can handle in the now of your life that if God had given it to you 4 or 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do the same thing with it? So at the end of verse 15, the man has left. He has divided some of his resources to those who have worked with him, but he did it according to their ability. Watch verse 16, right off. That means quickly. The first servant went to work and doubled his master's investment. Now, he went to work immediately. Doubling the investment did not occur overnight, but he went to work. That's God's word to somebody tonight, that if you ever expect to double the bag, you got to at least get to work. It may not happen overnight, and 9 times out of 10 it will not, but you certainly need to start off well. So right off, the first servant went to work and doubled his master's investment. Verse 17, the second did the same. That means the one who had $5,000 doubled it into 10. The one who had $2,000 doubled it into 4. Here's verse 17. We read verse 17. Here's verse 18. But the man with the single thousand dug a hole and carefully buried his master's money. Here's verse 19. After a long absence, the master of those 3 servants came back and settled up with them. The one given $5,000 showed him how he had doubled his investment. His master commended him. Here's what he said. Good work. You did your job well. From now on, be my partner. Verse 22, the servant with the 2,000 showed how he also had doubled his master's investment. His master commended him. Good work. You did your job well. From now on, be my partner. But here's verse 24. The servant given 1,000 said, Master, I know you have high standards and hate careless ways. Hey, here's what's interesting, Deaconess Brenda. The other two servants also knew that the master had high standards and that he hated careless ways. Same information available to all those who were involved, yet they chose to do different things with it. Ooh, 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 ooh. What is it that you are a part of that is working for other people, but it ain't working for you? Often we blame what we are connected to instead of putting the blame on it. Some people come to church and church don't never bless them. Some people connect to church and it never blesses them. But other people are blessed. So maybe something is wrong with your ability to receive and not so much with what the organization has to offer. So verse 24 says, the servant given 1,000 said, Master, I know you have high standards. I know that you hate careless ways, that you demand the best and make no allowances for error. I was afraid I might disappoint you. So I found a good hiding place. Some of y'all got stuff buried in the mattress. I found a good hiding place and secured your money. Here it is, safe and sound down to the last cent. The master was furious. That's a terrible way to live, he responded. It's criminal to live cautiously like that. If you knew I was after the best, why did you do less than the least? The least you could have done would have been to invest the sum with the bankers, where at least I would have gotten a little interest. Verse 28, here's how the master responded. Take the 1,000, give it to the one who risked the most, and get rid of this play it safe who won't go out on a limb. Right off the bat, Sister Thomas, we learn that if you're going to flip stuff God's way, you got to be willing to take some risks. Now, hold on. Because some of you say, Pastor, I'm going straight to Wawa and buy me 5,000 worth of lottery tickets. That's what I that's a risk. No. It is clear, and we'll see it tonight. These folks didn't put all of their eggs in one basket. They were diversified in how they invested their master's resources, but it did involve taking some risks. The one who was given 5,000 doubled it to 10. The one who was given 2,000 doubled it to 4. The one who was given 1,000 didn't do a thing because he buried it. I want to hand you some principles throughout this series, 4 different principles that I believe will be life-changing as you seek to understand how to develop a $1 million mindset. Pastor, can all of us become millionaires? Absolutely. Somebody say, oh, he preaching that health, wealth, and prosperity. No, I'm just telling the truth. I am telling the truth. All of us can be millionaires. Some of you are close to it already. Y'all don't tell all your business. But some of y'all are close to it already. At a minimum, what this passage proves is, given enough time and experience, you can take what you have and double it. at a minimum. If you say, Pastor, right now in the bank, I don't have but $20, at a minimum, given enough time, you ought to be able to double what it is that you already have. Well, if you double it 1 week and then not double your initial investment the following week, but double the investment and the dividends. So if you start off with $20 and you flip it somehow into 40, the next week you're not adding another 20, or the next month you're not adding another 20. Your goal is to double it all over again, not to add, but to multiply. The Lord certainly knows how to multiply. In the time frame that God gives you, you can take whatever he has given you and double it over and over and over again. Let me give you these 4. I'll start with the first one. Here it is. God, and I'm going to talk specifically about money in the beginning of this series. When I get to the end now, I'm going to flip that thing on you and tell you something else. Point number 1, God honors seed money. God honors seed money. Now, when I say seed money, I'm not talking about what you hear at a lot of churches now, where people prophesy to you and tell you that if you want your prophecy to come into fruition, you got to sow a seed. No, that's deception in the body of Christ. When I speak about seed money, I'm speaking directly from the text. The man did not say to his 3 servants, take what you have and flip it. The man said, take what I am giving you and invest it. I believe that God honors seed money, that God operates in the realm of investing in those who are willing to invest not only in the kingdom, but to invest in kingdom mindsets and kingdom attitudes. Don't tune me out. Because somebody just said, I caught it in the spirit. Somebody said, Pastor, you don't know my personal situation. I ain't got it like that. Let me get way ahead of myself and ask you one question. Have you eaten out one time in the last 30 days? Show of hands. Everybody done ate out at least one time in the last? Somebody said, Pastor, don't have me start counting fingers. I end up with toes and hairs on my head trying to count. When you ate out any one of those given times, could you instead have eaten something that was already in your house? Not maybe you didn't have nothing cooked. Could have been something in a can, something you could have pulled in a can. Them hurricane sausages you still got in the pantry. So when you ate out, it wasn't because there was nothing at all for you to eat, or you couldn't go to the grocery store, because you have to pay when you go out now, unless you got the people's stuff and ran out without paying for it. That means that you had a choice to either consume what you already had or take a little extra money. I am certainly not hating on eating out. Trust and believe. I'm not hating on eating out. But when you eat out as opposed to eating in, that means that there's some resources you spent on eating out. Even if it was $1, even if you got it off the dollar value menu at McDonald's, that was $1 that could have been invested in some other venture. I'm just being as base as we can, even if it were only $1. What I want you to recognize, if you're going to have $1 million mindset, you've got to get out of the mentality that what you have is not enough to start with. If you have anything at all, you have something to start with. And the Lord majors in giving us something to start with. I want to give you five different examples of ways that God can give you seed money. The first one you may not like that much, so we're going to read the passage that goes with it first. Proverbs chapter 13. I want to read this from the New American Standard. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 22. Again, reading from the New American Standard. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 22. These are the wise words of King Solomon as he reflected on all of life. Now, there's no one on the planet who has more money today or has ever had more money than Solomon. Nobody even comes close. Whoever you think is the richest person who has ever lived, they do not compare to the riches of Solomon. And here's what Solomon says after he had investigated all of life. He saw life in his ups, he saw life in his downs. And here is a conclusion that he draws in Proverbs 13 and verse 22. Here it is. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. The point that Solomon is making is the first point that I want to share with you. And let me shoot from the hip. Unfortunately, culturally, many of us see the word inheritance as something that is unattainable. When the truth is, all of us can leave something behind. That's why your kids be fighting over pots, because there's some other stuff you ain't left them that you could have left them. The first way that God can provide seed that can be turned into $1 million investments is through inheritance. And you say, Pastor, I didn't receive it. Nobody passed away and left me anything. All the more reason you should be preparing to leave something behind to those that you feel strongly will do something with it. It could be the down payment on someone's first automobile. It can be an investment in someone's college tuition. It can be setting money aside so that when your son or daughter turns 18, the down payment on a starter home is already in place. You say, Pastor, at 18, whether they choose to live in the house or not, the investment can be made and you rent the property out and it becomes a source of income for the child. You say, Pastor, where am I going to get that kind of money from? Well, the Lord says that given enough time, remember, don't miss the fact that in our text tonight in Matthew 25, it is clear that when the man left, he left for a period of time. Let me make it plain. We're at the end of 2023. If you had set aside $1 a day all year long, you'd have, at the end of this year, $365. If you lived another 10 years and only set aside $1 a day, 365 times 10, and you decide that's what I'm leaving to whomever that person, we could do a whole lot with your 10 years of 365. It'd be a great place for us to start. And we have got to get out of the mindset that everything is for us. Pastor, I had it hard. I came up the rough side of the mountain. Well, you shouldn't want everybody behind you to have to climb up the same rough side of the mountain. We ought to be willing and committed to leaving something behind. It's one thing to say, Pastor, I'm just going to get enough life insurance to bury myself. Well, if you had paid $10 more, You could have not only gotten enough to bury yourself, but enough to start a child or a grandchild off in college. We've got to get out of the mindset that it's all for us. I'm a minute old, man. That ain't how life works. And then you always sing about it's so hard to get along. The man is holding me down. It ain't the man. It ain't the man. It's some stuff you and your people could have done that would have made things a whole lot easier for someone else. Your child grows up, gets married, buys their first house. You ought to be able to open a folder and say, I've been expecting you to do this for the last 25 years. All of the furniture in your house is already paid for, so that your child doesn't have to go into debt getting started. Y'all like me? Y'all all right? Y'all good? And it doesn't matter where you are, you can start right now, wherever you are. Pick out somebody and say that there is something I want to be able to leave behind. Now, let me just go and share this with you for free now. It's two different ways that insurance policies come. One is called term insurance. The other is called whole insurance. Term insurance is a whole lot cheaper. The premium is a lot cheaper, but you can get a much larger face value on the policy. Whole insurance, however, is a little different. It costs more. The longer you have the policy, you can borrow money from your own policy, but it does not have an ending date. With term life insurance, once you reach 80 years old, for most term life insurance policies, that's the end of the policy. But with whole insurance, you live to be 100. And whatever that face value is, you're able to take from it if you need to down the road. Whatever that face value is, you'll be able to leave that behind for someone else. I mention that because a whole lot of us societally are living a whole lot longer than 80 years. And, you know, I want you to be prepared in the long haul. I get to hang out with a lot of different folks. One of my banker friends, I talked with one of my banker friends this past week, but one of my other banker friends, he and I were riding together some years ago, and he was telling me about one of his close relatives, and he said just casually that a relative left them $200,000. I started looking down my family tree to see if somebody was supposed to leave me something. So it can be done, and you can do it, and you can be a blessing to somebody else who is coming along behind you. And you can add stipulations to it on how the money is to be handled. You can set all of that in place through a trust and a will, and however you set that up. But one of the ways that the Lord allows us to have seed money. When I talk about seed money, Sister Norman, I'm talking about money you can start with. Tam, you don't eat seed, you plant it. The goal of an apple seed, don't miss this. The goal of an apple seed is apples. Here's where some of us mess up. We think the goal of an apple seed is an apple tree. No, you can't eat the tree, but you can eat the apples. You plant the seed, the tree grows, you water the tree. Eventually, if the tree remains healthy, it produces apples. And inside of every apple are more apple seeds. God believes in the whole process of sowing and the process of reaping. So one of the first ways you can start off with seed money is through an inheritance. And even if you didn't get one, you can leave one. If you start tonight and don't live but another 10 days, and I pray all of us live longer than 10 days, but if you start tonight and don't live but another 10 days, that's $10 that somebody has that you would have left. You say, Pastor, I can do at least 2 a day. All right, that's $20. Now that somebody will have. That's the first one, an inheritance. Here's the second one, an investor. An investor. Pastor, what do you mean by that? This man in Matthew 25 is taking his own money and investing it in someone else's future. And sometimes people will invest in you, or they will invest in your idea. Some of us, one of our challenges is our ceilings are too low. We only hang out with people who hang out with us. Instead of recognizing that the world is larger than whatever your circle is, and if you can get outside of your circle, God can open greater and greater doors of opportunity. Hey, I shared with you all a few weeks ago a problem that I'm having with one of the banks that I bank with. And I talked to a number of people in the banking industry to gain some insight. I also talked to an attorney to gain some insight from them, because I would sue these folks if I thought I would win initially. You know, but attorneys work that way too. If they think they can win, they can sue. So the attorney said, before we get into suing folks, he said, it's someone else that I want you to talk to. And he directed me to them. And because here's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know, Deacon James, if I knew somebody who knew somebody. That's what I wanted to know. If I knew somebody who knew somebody. So the first person was real high up in local banking. They said, Pastor Thorpe, I wish I knew somebody at that bank, but I don't. Second person I talked to in banking said, Pastor Thorpe, I don't know anybody high up at that bank, but you don't need to know anybody high up at the bank. He says, I can show you how to appeal directly to the federal government. And your appeal to the federal government will kickstart a process that will work directly with the presidents and regional presidents of the entire bank. And the problem with a lot of us, we don't talk to nobody. We don't want to know nobody who knows anything more than we do. The devil is a liar. I talk to people all the time, because if I want to go somewhere that I have never been, I need to connect with somebody who done been there. Man, you talking about being a millionaire and having $1 million money? Yeah, you can. Talk to some. I have some friends who are multi-millionaires, and I don't want their money. So Sharon, I don't want their money. I do like learning how you got it. Some of my millionaire friends, even to this day, are still very hard working with their own hands. Even though they could pay people to do what it is that they do with their own hands, the point about that is, once they got to where they are, don't miss this, once they got to where they are, they didn't forget how they got there. That's the problem with a whole lot of people who start off wealthy one day, and you see them 4 or 5 years down the road, and they're asking you for $20 because they didn't recognize what it takes to stay at the top. And often it takes a lot of what you used on the way going to the top. All right, so the first way that God can put seed money in your hand is through an inheritance. Here's a second way, an investor. That's someone who either invests in you or someone who invests in your idea. When I became pastor of this church in 1998, very soon after that, we started looking for land to purchase to build a new building, and then we started the process of actually building the new church. We went to the bank that the church was banking with at that time, and I'll never forget, the loan officer said to me, we were trying to borrow $30,000 to purchase 25.46 acres of land for just $30,000. A year before, the same land had a price tag of $305,000. But the owner couldn't sell it, brought the price down all the way to $30,000 because he was $23,000 behind on the property taxes. He was just trying to get out from under his investment. Brought the price all the way down to $30,000. It didn't stay on the market but for a day, because once we saw it, we were the first folks to see it. Once it hit the market, we put a binder on it immediately. And we went to the church's bank to borrow the $30,000. And I'll never forget, the loan officer said, we like, these were his exact words, we like to lend money to big churches. I said, okay then. My first thought was, Deaconess Betty, is that as soon as we did get the loan, my first thought was, I'm going to move all the church's money out of that bank into another bank, because if they said they don't like lending money to smaller churches, then they should be handling the money of smaller churches. So we started talking to other folks and connected with a bank. They said, no problem, Pastor Thorpe, we'll do the loan for you to take care of the property. 3 weeks before the contract was to expire, the loan officer contacted me and said, Pastor, we've changed our position. And the only way we will do the loan for the church is if your entire board of directors signs off as personal guarantors on the loan. I said to him, sir, if one man can drive a $30,000 vehicle, a whole church ought to be able to borrow $30,000. So I ended up going back to the same folks who told me no. Same loan officer. Went back to him. I said, we back here at you because our money is in your bank and we want to borrow this money. He said, I don't want to let y'all borrow the money because you want to buy land to build a church. He said, we'll never loan you money to build a church. I said, well, you let me worry about the church building part. Do we qualify for the money to borrow it? He said, all right, we'll let you borrow the money. We borrowed the money, $30,000, bought 25.47 acres of land. I was driving by the property one day. It was so big, Tam, until the front end of our property was 979 feet long. And it was twice as long on the back as it was on the front. I said, Lord, we don't need all this. We want a church, not a ranch. So I hung out with some friends, talked with some other pastor friends of mine of all hues. Just because somebody's your color don't mean they're your kind. All right, yeah, I'm trying to set somebody free tonight. So I talked to folks from all hues, visited with some pastors in Jacksonville. There was a church in Jacksonville that sits right alongside Interstate I-295, Interstate 295. Talked with the pastor of the church, and he had used the same builder that we were intending to use. And he pointed to the church's property. He said, do you see that billboard that's on our property? He said, they pay us $60,000 a month to have that billboard up there. I said, they do. I came back into our property. I said, can we put a billboard up? Talking with the same pastor. He said, look over there. There's a cell phone tower on our property. He said, they pay us $55,000 annually just to have that cell phone tower on. I started calling AT&T. Y'all just need to know. The pastor's a thug in Jesus' name. I believe in gathering information. He said they pay us $55,000 a year just to have their cell phone. I started calling them people. I said, do y'all need a cell tower on the east side of Gainesville? We got somewhere you can put one. Then they said, Pastor, before we built the building, there were trees all over our property. We sold the trees and made tens of thousands of dollars that they used to invest in the building. I called the timber company to see if they wanted our trees off of our property. Moving in the direction of what I felt the Lord was leading us to do. Then I said, we don't need all this property to start off with. Let's sell some. Contacted a realtor to find out about how much of it we could sell. A number of people started showing it. Oh, the first realtor we talked to, who had been the realtor who sold us the property, said, don't list it, I'll buy it. Now, here's what's interesting about that, Deaconess Betty. If she wanted to buy it after we bought it, if she would have seen it first, she would have bought it before we ever got it. That's why you can't be lazy. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story. The very day that the property became available for us to see, the realtor called me and said, Pastor Thorpe, I know we have a plan for you to come to game. I was living in Jacksonville at the time. Said, Pastor Thorpe, I know we have a plan for you to come and see the property. She said, but Pastor, it's been raining all day here like cats and dogs. She said, there's no way you'll be able to walk the property because the weather is so bad. And I already had the entire board of directors scheduled to come out at that time to view the property with me. None of us had seen it. I called my pastor. That's why you gotta be careful who you hang out with at all times, because those will be the only people who have access to you. I called my pastor. I said, Pastor, the realtor says she has 3 pieces of property that are available. One was 10 acres, one was 7 acres, and one was 25.47 acres. I said, Pastor Lattimore, the realtor just called and said, don't come because it's been raining so bad. My pastor said to me, Thorpe, the Lord has never done anything for anyone being lazy. He said, if that property is there, go see it. I called her back. I said, I don't care how bad it's raining. I'm coming to see it, and my team is going to meet me there. Tam, it was raining so bad that day on I-10 coming out of Jacksonville until I literally could not tell where the 301 exit was. I was still dressed in my work clothes. I was a diesel mechanic at that time, still dressed in work clothes to come out and see the property on behalf of the church. Came out, the rain had stopped. And we walked the property and never stepped into a puddle because the land sloped on the back end and drained off so well it never held any water. And we walked it from front to back and put a binder on. Deacon Marion Keith Clark wrote the check that night, a $500 binder right out there. It was woods at the time. Wrote the check, put a binder on the property. Some time later, once I recognized, as we were trying to get the loan, for the other pieces of it, recognized we had more than what we needed. Called that realtor back. She said, don't list it, I'll buy it. And this is what she said, Sister Norman, that got under my skin. She said, I'll buy it if you'll sell it to me at the same rate that you paid for it. I say, well, I was born in the afternoon, but it wasn't yesterday afternoon. I said, no, we won't be doing that. And furthermore, I ain't going to use you because you've already proven you don't have our best interests at heart. And the Lord helped me to connect with another real estate professional. And we listed the property, signed a contract to list the property. And I called her and I said, well, who do we have who's interested? She said, well, Pastor, one of the groups that's interested in the property is Habitat for Humanity. And a couple of months later, we had heard nothing from any of them. So I called her and I said, did we hear anything back from Habitat for Humanity? She said, Pastor, we haven't heard a word. Tam, I'm from the hood. I called Habitat for Humanity and talked to their director. Dr. Alvin, the lady said, Pastor Thorpe, we really want the property. We want to build our very first subdivision, but we don't have all the money at one time. I said, we'll do owner financing. Y'all can make payments. The Lord worked it out that by the time we got to closing, I found out the week before closing that they had raised all the money for the land. We paid $30,000 for 25.47 acres. Sold 15 acres to Habitat for Humanity, kept 10.47. Now let me put that in context. The building that we currently occupy, we could build the building itself 100 more times on the amount of land that we own right now. So room to expand. Paid $30,000 for the whole thing. Sold 15 to Habitat for Humanity for $55,500. Don't miss this. I'm literally testifying the whole thing I want to teach you over these next couple of weeks. When we got the $55,500 from Habitat, we didn't throw a crab party. You know what we did? We paid off the $30,000. Had money left over to invest in beginning the building process. Don't miss this. Don't miss this, Sister Adriana. So we had plenty of money left over. More money than what we needed for the next phase of the project. I didn't write a check for the next phase of the project because my goal was not spending money. My goal was building a church. So I went back to the same bank who initially told us they wouldn't give us the 30. They ended up giving it to us. We paid it off. I said, we need another $11,000 to begin the building process. He said, well, you got the money because we know what you sold the property for. He said, we know you can write a check. I said, yeah, we can write a check, but I want to build a relationship with you. He said, well, you obviously qualify for the $11,000 because you borrowed 30 and paid it back. He said, but I don't want to give you the $11,000 because then you're going to want me to finance the church, and I'm not doing it. I say, you let me worry about all that. Do we qualify for the 11? He said, you qualify for the 11. Within a matter of months after them giving us 11,000, we turned right around, paid the 11,000 back off. We were building a track record and a history. A couple months later, I called him up. I said, I want to talk with you. He said, about what? I said, we want to build a church. He said, I've told you we're not going to loan you the money to build a church. I said, all right, I understand. I said, I understand. Waited a couple of months. Called him back. I said, here's what I would like to ask you. He said, I don't want to ask you. I said, I don't want to ask you for the money to build a church. What I would like to ask you is what will it take for us to qualify to borrow the money? Tell me how many members we need to have. They call them giving units. Tell me how much money we need to have in the bank. And he said, well, come meet with me. I'll lay out all the bank's parameters on what it would take for you to get money from us. Because they had already told us point blank, we like to lend money to big churches. Tam sat down with him across from we were in a big conference room at Compass Bank, big conference room. And sitting across the table, and he said, well, the first thing you would need to have are the last 3 years of the church's financial records. And of course, I'm not in my diesel mechanic uniform at this time. I'm at a business meeting, and I came looking like business. Walked in my briefcase. He said, I'm going to need the last 3 years of your church's financial. I said, no, that's not a problem. Reached in my briefcase and handed him the 3 years of, because I did my research. Everything I'm telling y'all, I'm going to be telling y'all. I'd already done my research, handed him the 3 years. He said, well, the next thing we would need is the last 3 years of your membership growth records. I said, I got that too, handed that to him. He said, then I would need the last 3 years of your church's giving trends. I said, that's not a problem. I got that too, because I'd already talked to a lot of folks. And I had the blueprints, because we spent the $11,000 that we borrowed just like we said. Don't miss this. We didn't go to them saying, give us 11 grand, and then we did something different with it from what we asked for it for. We did exactly what we said we were going to do. We paid for all the blueprints we needed to build the new building. And so I rolled the blueprints out, and we're standing over this big conference table, and I'm looking down at the blueprints. I'm showing him where the offices are going to be, where the baptismal pool is going to be, where the sound booth is going to be. And he said, now remember, the reason I went to him was to ask him, what will we need to do to qualify to get money from you? That's all I wanted to know. So I'm looking down at the plans, and I didn't recognize that he had stood from the table, and he was looking at me. And I promise you, Sister Sharon, this is exactly how it went. He said, I'll do your loan. I kept talking like I didn't hear him, because I wasn't expecting to hear that. And I'm saying, I wonder, is he going to say that again? He said, I'll do your loan. I'm like, sir, we haven't even filled out an application for this loan. You're going to loan us more than $250,000, and we haven't even filled out an application? He said, yeah, I'm going to do your loan. This is the truth of what he said. He said, I'm not going to do the loan because of your church. He said, I'm going to do the loan because of what I see in you. I said all of that to say, people will not only invest in your idea, but somebody is looking for someone like you to invest in. That's why you got to be careful how you treat people. You got to be careful how you carry yourself. You got to be careful how you talk to people. So the first way that God provides seed money is through inheritance. The second way is through an investor, someone who will either invest in you or invest in your idea. Let me give you the third way. Uneaten seed. Uneaten seed. Because if you're living on a farm and you don't have any job outside of the farm, some of that corn you plant, you don't sell it all. Some of it you got to save for your family to eat. But with what's left over, the harvest you bring in that's left over, set it aside, because the Lord can use that set aside seed as the seed money for you to invest to do greater and greater things. Uneaten seed. Dean James, several years ago, we had a position in our church. It was a paid position. We had a number of people who worked in that position. It was a paid position. A new person joined our church who happened to be skilled in that same area, started working in that same department, and unfortunately, the person who was in the paid position needed to leave. The person who had joined our church, who was working within the department, volunteered to step into the role that the paid person was in, but would not let me pay them. So here we were budgeted to spend this much every week in every pay period. Now we have a person who's willing to do the job but not accept any payment at all. What do? Do you take that money and throw a crab party? I literally did this. I literally took, Sister Adriana, the amount of what that salary would be, set up an automatic drafting to move that money every week. Now, we could have waited every month, but my mind works weekly. You got to know how your mind works. Some of us can't do stuff. Some of us, if our job paid us once a month, we'd be broke broke by week 2 because we spend it all up. So we took the money that we would have been paying into the position and had it automatically drafted every week from one account into a special savings account. And the Lord used that money to carry us through great seasons and allowed us to invest to do greater and greater things for the kingdom. Don't eat all your seed. Save some. You're not going, well, maybe you're like this. Maybe by this point you're like this. Sometimes God does not need to increase your income. You just need wisdom to decrease your outgo. And what you ought to do, assign an amount to whatever you saved. I'm going to explain it better in a minute. Assign an amount to whatever you save and use that to invest. Let me give it to you like this. I'm going to put it in some terms a lot of us can handle. I don't want to ask y'all to raise your hands. Don't raise your hands. And try to be still. If I ask the ladies in here whether or not you get a manicure or pedicure on a regular basis, some of y'all would say yes. And ain't nothing in the world wrong with manicures and pedicures. Nothing in the world wrong with it. But if you decide that you will start clipping and filing your own stuff, assign a dollar amount to it. Say to yourself, what does a manicure cost? $50 to $65. What does a pedicure cost? Pedicure costs $50, $60. $50, $60. What does a manicure cost? $100 together. Foots and fingers. $100 together. If you decide, I'm not telling you to do this, but if you decided that you were going to take that $100 for 12 months, or 14 months, or 24 months, and say, instead of me getting my nails and toes done, I'm going to clip and file, but I'm not just going to absorb the money. I'm going to assign that dollar amount to set it aside for investing. So at the end of 12 months, you got $1,200. Your income didn't increase, but your outgo decreased. That's uneaten seed. Some of what God, and I'm going to give it to you in another way in a minute. Ooh, we over time. I'm going to give you this next piece, though. So, uneaten seed, don't just absorb it, name it. That I used to spend this money for this, now I'm going to spend it for that. And it could be that you've been disappointed so many times by nail techs. And so you say, I'm just not doing that anymore. But instead of just absorbing it, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to label it as seed money for the next investment. Let me give you the next one. Not only uneaten seed, but prioritized seed. Prioritized seed. I learned this one in a very professional setting that also involved our church. Prioritized seed. And this is where I'm going to stop tonight. What is it in your life, and this can be for, a defined period of time, for 12 months. What is it in your life that you are willing to do without that you are already paying for? I mean something like this. Let me share it this way. Up until about a year ago, and I'm going to add some context to this. Our cable bill at home, I'm just going to shoot from straight now, was $284. Now let me add some context. I was uploading videos for the church, so you need to have the highest speed internet possible to upload those large videos, so that kind of internet costs more. I like TV. Certain things I like to see on TV. I need SEC channel. I need stars, because all the 50, don't judge me, it is what it is. All the 50 Cent programs, Power Force, Raising Canaan, I got to have all of them. So $284 a month. Was talking with the Verizon guy, making some changes, because periodically I review all contracts. Talking with the Verizon guy, and I said, what promotions do you have that can lower my phone bill? They say, well, who do you use for internet? I said, I use the local cable company, because I got to have a lot of speed. He said, well, we can provide the same speed for you for $25. He say, and then instead of having cable, you can get YouTube TV and stream all the programs you want to see at a fraction of the cost. I said, well, sign me up for some of that. And here's what I did. Before I cut the cable off, I let them send me their stuff, made sure it worked. Then I called the cable people and told them I'm bringing your boxes and your remotes. A month or so later, talking with my brother Alex, and he said, man, I'm connected with this new company called Imagine TV, and I get all the channels I want for $42 a month. I say, so $25 for the cable, and 42 for all the channels. So it went from $284 to less than $100 and get 20 times more than what I had before. So if you say, I'm going to do without what I've already been paying for, then you set that money aside as seed money to use for investing. Maybe what you've caught already is all of us, according to this text. Now, you saw this in Matthew 20. You didn't hear this from Thorpe. You saw it in Matthew 25. According to Matthew 25, if you are not investing in something, you are displeasing God. The Lord told this servant who had been given 1,000, he said, I didn't give you 10,000 because I knew you couldn't handle it. I only gave you 1,000, but you did nothing with it. All you did was bury it. You didn't even put it in the bank so I could gain interest off of it. He said, you could have done more. And what we cannot afford to do is get to heaven, and the Lord says, what did you do with all that seed I gave you? You know what some of us going to say? Ate it, wore it, drove it, sprayed it on, bathed in it. Some folks not in the building smoked it, drank it. And the Lord is going to say, I didn't give it to you to eat, smoke, drink, drive. I gave it to you to invest it so that you can comfortably leave not only an inheritance to your kids, but your grandkids. And all the people said, amen. We going to make it through this series over time. The Lord wants to use, and some of you, the light bulbs are going on. I could be doing more. Even if you're doing well, you can be doing more. What can I do without? And instead of just absorbing it, go back and look. For those of you who purchase things, Tam, I used to buy everything with a debit card. I don't like cash money. And now, let me clarify. If you want to give me cash money, that's different. You can give me all the cash money you want. But as far as carrying cash money, if you rob me on the street, you just getting practice. You're going to get a wallet full of some stuff, cards and all that. But don't try to rob me now, because you're going to get some other stuff you try to rob me. That's a whole nother Bible study. But I don't like carrying cash. I used to like the convenience of debit cards. Used to love the convenience of debit cards because one of the things that debit cards allow me to do is look back every month and see how I spent money. And if you just say 1 week out of the month, I'm not eating out at all. You go back and look at your statement at what you spend on eating out 1 week. All them breakfast stops, lunch stops, dinner stops, crabs. It adds up. And if you say for 1 week out of every month, I'm not eating out at all for 1 week, that $100, $150, whatever it comes up to be, set that aside into a specific account that you do not touch and use that so when the Lord creates opportunities for investment, you're able to move forward. I used to love debit cards. I don't. I use my debit card so infrequently until I had to go to the bank this week and had to press my brain to remember the PIN number. I was having lunch with a banker who invited me out to lunch. Douglas Pratt is his name. And he got, we were coming to the end of lunch, and we were about to have a duel on who was going to pay for lunch. And he said, you cannot pay for lunch. He said, not only do I want to pay for your lunch, he said, I need to pay for your lunch. And he reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out his credit card. I said, that's how you going to pay? He said, Pastor, he said, I use this credit card for everything that I buy. He said, you couldn't pay me to own a debit card. I said, what? My issue is, Sister Adriana, I hate debt with a passion. I hate debt. So in my mind, I got to deal with what I can handle at the time. At the time that he shared that with me, I could not see racking up debt on a credit card because I don't like debt. At that time, I could not see it. But I got a little older, got a little more wiser. Now you couldn't pay me to use a debit card. You know why? What I do, I research online which credit cards offer the highest amount of cash back rewards. I don't want your Starbucks gift card that the bank give me. I don't want, give me cash. I don't even want you taking the cash reward and applying it to my balance. Send me the cash in a check or a direct deposit. Now, Sister Thomas, one of my sources of income is the reward money that I get for spending my own money. The first of every month, all the cards are paid off in full, and I get checks for everything I bought all month long. The money that comes in from those checks doesn't go into the regular operating account. It goes into a special savings account just used for things that came in other than my regular income. So I'm making money by spending money, using it as seed money to do more and more things. Now, if you're not at the point that you can use a credit card and not be compelled to pay it off at the end of the month, don't do what I'm doing. Don't do what me and Douglas Pratt are doing. You keep using your debit card, keep up with it, don't spend more than you make. But let God give you some seed that you can use to invest in yourself and in the kingdom. I'm done tonight. I'm done. Y'all caught my time good. Let's stand. We're going to pray. We're headed home. I am convinced that if we know better, we do better. And if we do better, we can change our lives forever. Let's pray. Lord, we are thankful for who you are and all that you mean to us. Thank you for your word. Thank you for your people. Challenge us and change us. Stretch us out of our comfort zones. Use us to be what you have called us to be. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's give God a great big hand. Great big hand. Great big hand. Love you all. Look forward to seeing you Sunday morning and Sunday night. 9:15 in the morning and then 10:30 this upcoming Sunday night.